Hello everyone, it's Fahim again, and I wanted to go over the final part of rates today, which is average speed. And so average speed is actually a pretty common type of question that's seen on the SHSAT exam, and it's one that a lot of people tend to get wrong as well. So when you think of average, usually add up a bunch of different numbers and divide it by the total number, right? So let's go over a quick example as to how people make a mistake for average speed. So we have here Sam travels at a speed of 40 miles per hour for 4 hours, switches directions and travels at 60 miles per hour for another 2 hours. So what is the speed of his trip? And so what a lot of students will do is, well, they'll see, 40 miles per hour, and they'll see 60 miles per hour, and they'll say, okay, well, average will just equal 40 plus 60 over 2, which is 100 divided by 2, which gives you 50 as your answer. And that would be wrong. That is not how you find average speed. There's a particular equation that you see, and it's something that you should have memorized, especially when you see this indicator of average speed. And that equation is average speed is equal to total distance over total time. And what that means is you find the distances traveled for each part of the question, and you find the total time traveled for that each part of the question, and you add them and divide. So if you have Sam travels at a speed of 40 miles per hour for 4 hours, you can find the distance. You're given the time already. And for the second part, 60 miles per hour for another 2 hours, again, you can find the distance, right? And so the equation that you use is, of course, D is equal to RT. And a very helpful way of answering these questions is by creating something that I like to call the dirt table. So it's a very easy way of looking at it, and it's basically like a tic-tac-toe, right? So you have the breakdown of D, R, and T, and you essentially plug everything in. Okay, so we have the dirt table, and all you do now is, plug in the different information. So for the first part of the trip, it's 40 mph at 4 hours. So it's 40 at 4 hours. And the second part of the trip is 60 at 2 hours. If you do the math, right? Distance equal to rate times time. So this is 160, and this will be 120, right? So let's do the math. So the average will equal the distance, right? It's 160 plus 120 over 4 plus 2. So 160 plus 120 gives you 280. 4 plus 2 is 6. And whatever 280 divided by 6 is will be your final answer, which is what, 46.7 or so, right? So let's go on to another example. Rachel traveled from home at a rate of 60 miles per hour, okay? She drove 250 miles to her friend Stacy's house in 3 hours. If the distance from Rachel's workplace to her home is 240 hours, what was her average speed for the entire trip? Okay, so step 1, make the dirt table, right? So usually these questions only really have 2 sets of information, right? So for the first part, the rate is 60 miles per hour. Doesn't say the distance or time, so let's skip that. She then drove 250 miles. Okay, great, so 250 miles. to her friend's Stacy's house in 3 hours. Okay, so we have 3 hours right here. If the distance from Rachel's workplace to her home is 240 hours, so the distance right here is 240, what was her average speed? So again, we don't really need to find the rate for this bit of information right now, because all we're really looking for is, you know, the different distances and the different times. So if you solve for distance here, 240 divided by 60 gives you 4, right? So we have all of our information. We have 240, we have 250, we have 4, and we have 3. And that's all the information that we really need to find the average. So average is equal to 240 plus 250 over 4 plus 3, which is 490 over 7, or 70 miles per hour. Now we have one final example, and for this situation, we're actually going to be given the average speed, and you sort of have to, you know, fit in the little pieces of the puzzle and find some other information, right? So again, how do you figure out what type of question you're doing? It'll always say somewhere in the sentence, it'll say average speed, right? So before I even start this question, I scanned it. It says average speed, so I'm going to draw a dirt table. Right? I'm just going to fill in as much information as I possibly can. So Jonathan drove 450 miles to his grandmother's house in Florida at a rate of 90 miles per hour. So I'm just going to fill this in and say that this is going to be 5, right? Let's just do this over time. So once he arrived, he drove her to the hospital. Damn, that sucks. To the hospital in 2 hours. So right here, we have 2 hours. If the average speed of the entire trip was 80 miles per hour, okay, so we're given the average, like I mentioned. How fast was he traveling for the second part of the trip? Okay, so again, we have almost all of the information that we need. We have 450, we have 5, we have 2. We're solving for this last piece of distance, right? So we don't know what it is, so let's just call it x. And let's plug in the information. So this time around, we're given the average speed, so it's 80. It's equal to the sum of the distances, which is 450 plus x over. We're given both times, so it's 5 plus 2. And all we're really doing is solving for x, right? So 5 plus 2 is 7, so 450 plus x over 7. Multiply both sides by 7. And what we have is 560 is equal to 450 plus x. Subtract both sides by 450, and x is equal to 110. And that's it. That's all we do. It's as simple as that, guys. That's average speed. So again, the equation is right here. Average speed is equal to total distance over total time. Essentially what you do is, when you look at the question, you identify if it's average speed or not. Once you do, just create the dirt table right here, plug in the information for average speed, just total distance over total time, and solve. So thanks again, guys, and I'll speak to you guys soon. Have a good one.